Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to yet another segment of Eagle Eye Prophetic Perspectives with our Lucier and friends. Before I get to our guest today, there's something that led to this guest coming on, and that is the whole COVID-19, call it pandemic, lockdown. On and around March 15th of last year, 2020, everything in the world changed and was about to change. The administration of Donald Trump would announce that America was in a state of emergency, effectively shutting down its borders to any and all travelers. Canada and other nations in the world would soon follow. The said pandemic was now upon the whole world, and they would call it COVID-19. Indeed, with videos emerging from China of people apparently falling dead in the streets, fear spread through the world very fast. Indeed, I saw those videos. I honestly didn't know what to think. We had what the media was telling us, and that's about it. From our church, for our church and ministry here in Kelowna, we reluctantly shut down for 2 weeks. But we soon began to question our reasoning for ceasing having services and shutting down. Churches in British Columbia, it was then said that we were allowed to have a maximum of 50 people gathering. Whereas many churches were shut, they stayed shut. And indeed, some are still actually shut down around us. Well, after seeking the Lord on what we really should do about this, we regathered, trying to follow the guidelines as best we could. And we did that. And we did that through the month of April and May, right through the summer. Normally when churches slow down and get a little bit slow in summer, we decided to go to multiple services from 1 to 2, trying again to stick at the provincial guideline of 50 people. We did that right through the summer. And then came the day in November 18th, last year of 2020, that our provincial health officer, Bonnie Henry, announced that she was shutting down churches fully, 0 people allowed to meet with any type of COVID-19 safety plan for 2 weeks. She said, please, church leaders of British Columbia, just let's shut down just for 2 weeks. Well, after really seeking the Lord and meeting with our leadership here in Kelowna, we felt that that was not an order that we could follow. We knew that we were going to be going into a bit of lonely territory. Indeed, we were going into an action of staying open for our own personal convictions and with what we believe the Word of God says. We knew that we were coming into a place where we were going to be at odds with the government, with a possible legal system, and with others who felt differently of the conviction. Today, though, I want to meet someone. I want to introduce you to someone on this prophetic perspective program. And this young man we met because of the lockdown and the COVID-19 deal. And so with that, now I'm going to give a bit of a disclaimer here, actually. And the disclaimer is this young man has recently come back to the Lord. He's had quite the journey. We're going to talk about it. He's a millennial Gen Z. He's at the bottom of the age group for millennial and at the top of the age group for Gen Z, a Zoomer. as some would call it. He's 25-year-old rapper, rap recording artist, podcaster, entrepreneur, Mitch Murphy. So Mitch, all right, welcome to the program. I'm sure you didn't see this one coming, and just recently that I was going to invite you on to Eagle Eye Prophetic Perspective, but welcome to our program.
Thanks, Art, and hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here.
All right, so as I said, you are a podcaster. You've done numerous podcasts. You have redpillnation.ca. Why don't you explain what Red Pill Nation is?
Yeah, so Red Pill Nation, it's my business, and it's Red Pill Nation is .ca is a website, because essentially not only could I not get signed to any label if I wanted to, they don't want anything to do with me because I'm so offensive. I'm deeply, deeply offensive, and I would say correct about the things that I'm making music about. But I just have no interest in towing the line, and you see it all the time. Like every artist has to put out a Black Lives Matter thing, or they have to wear a mask in their album cover or something like that. They have to bend the knee. They always have to bend the knee in either the content of their music or the promotion for it, or just something to do with their image has to be to put forward the mainstream narrative. And I tend to do the opposite. Strongly, I do the opposite. And so my idea with redpillnation.ca is to just build something for myself to where on redpillnation.ca I can sell my music directly to fans. So I don't need to put it on Spotify or any of these outlets. I do put some of it on YouTube just for people to get to hear it, but the idea is that my album, you can buy it on there, and then you can buy merch. And my headspace is that if I can make this work for myself, somebody that's this outrageous and offensive to the general public, then I could make it work for other artists, because I think coming down the line, you can get canceled for anything. So it's my hope that I can make it work for myself, and that in turn I can foster free thought and free expression in the nation through this brand that is Red Pill Nation. Doesn't mean everybody has to agree with me, but I think we should all be able to understand that free speech, free expression, these things are important, not just as laws, but as principles that we follow. So I hope that makes sense.
All right, that's great. Okay, so before we get any deeper with Mitch Murphy and who he is, where he's come from, the reason I'm sharing this with the Canadian Firewall and with the believers around this nation, what we experienced here in Kelowna, in the shutdown, in keeping our church open throughout the lockdown, we never actually did ever stop having church. What happened was we watched prodigals, unsaved, a plethora of people from different walks of life, different ages, coming to our church, coming back to the Lord, getting saved. We've done around 7 or 8 baptisms this year around the province, mainly here in Kelowna. We've seen so much fruit from the prayers of the Canadian Firewall and from the intercessors who've been praying for Canada. So I wanted to show you a bit of the fruit of some of the prayers, and we want to give you some perspective on how to pray for our young people. So I'm excited to do this program with you. So with that, today, Mitch Murphy today is one of our youth pastors, one of our youth leaders in Kelowna Harvest Church, which is pretty awesome. And so we've recently kicked up a youth group here in Kelowna. Now, it would be 6 short months ago that we even know you. Did we meet? But before we get into now, or even just in this last year, you've got a bit of a past. So, tell us a little bit about your past, your church experience, Bible experience. So why don't we start there?
Sure.
How were you raised? What was your upbringing?
Baptist. I was raised Baptist. I grew up in Summerland. I think most people that grew up in the 80s and prior, I share a lot with them as far as how I grew up. Because I grew up climbing trees, falling out of them, come home when the street lights turn on, just sort of pretty common sense stuff that allows you to find your own limits, push the line, get hurt, scrape your knee, and come home. That's kind of how I grew up with that principle of freedom and fostering a free childhood. With that being said, I grew up in what I would call a churchian institution. As a child, my relationship with God was very painful. I would say it was painful. As my understanding was that my brain was a battlefield. And I don't think that's even necessarily an incorrect teaching. I think the way it was taught to me was ingrained in just a very negative way. I felt at odds all the time with my own thinking. I felt I could never figure out, as a young child, I could never figure out if, as a thought was running through my head, whether it was mine, God's, or the devil's. Because I think I was introduced to that concept of spiritual warfare in the mind at a rudimentary level, when maybe I should have been given the opportunity to know God and understand who He is before some of that. Because I just remember feeling so much shame growing up, if I would ever sin or if I would ever have a problem, and it just seemed as if I would never be good enough to enter the kingdom, and so
Wow.
seemed like a lost cause to me to even try.
So at what age was it that you actually kind of walked away from the church, walked away from your relationship with God?
I started asking the wrong questions in church around 13, questions that people didn't want to hear from me. But it was right about 16 that baby in the bathwater, they were gone. I'd thrown them out the window, and I just decided, I'm going to do as thou wilt, and I'm going to just feed every desire that I have and live for me. Because I was quite convinced that if God was real and He was who I understood Him to be, the last place I'd want to be for eternity was with Him. So I just made this decision that I'll just be agnostic, and I'll drink my face off and be with as many women as I want and just get crazy.
All right. Okay. Did you dabble in the New Age at all?
Yeah, as I grew up, I found myself searching for sure. So probably from age 16 to 18, it was just gluttony. It's just straight gluttony all the time. I started smoking all the time, partying a lot, and had some fun too. It wasn't all negative. I did some good things, but to me, looking back, it's what's highlighted in my mind is I think I view it as quite negative, just because now that I know the end result. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't all this horrible experience. I had a ton of fun, is the truth. I had a lot of fun. I had made a lot of friends, did a lot of stuff that I wanted to do. But the end result as an adult was where it led me, is where the problem really lied.
Okay. All right. So, fallen away from the Lord, now you've had a bunch of fun. Yeah. Sin is fun. I know I was on the streets for a lot of years. Some was pretty fun. You dabbled in the New Age. How about anything else? Did you look into any other religions, read anything else?
Yeah,
or is it just partying?
So basically the timeline was that growing up, and then right when I was 18, I moved away to Edmonton, got out of the small town that I grew up in. And while I was there, I just started systematically screwing my whole life up. I got a DUI while I was out there, and just kind of started. That's when things started to go south, and that's when I started kind of searching. But it's so funny because I wanted to know God, and I wanted to know truth. I wanted the Logos. I wanted it bad, but I wasn't willing to let go of the sin. I wasn't willing to let go of the things that I wanted. I just also wanted the truth. And so I started listening to Sam Harris and Joe Rogan, and I remember reading Dawkins, and I read the Quran, and then got really into meditation. But it's funny because the idea of New Age meditation, a lot of it is to eliminate thoughts from your mind. It's to slow down the thought process, watch your thoughts as they float by, do all these new agey things. But what it became for me was a tool to eliminate all sense of guilt or anything. I would be able to do bad things, and then I would go back to my practice and go, oh, just eliminate the thoughts, blow them out your ears, don't worry about it. And it became a tool for me to be able to act however I wanted, and I could say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Because I could tap into something and feel all woo-woo and like all special, but I didn't have to give up the things that I liked. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. And, there's certain ones that'll definitely be able to identify with that. But it's interesting, prodigal or not, being angry at God, there's still this search for the spiritual. And I believe for our firewall intercessors, there is, I'm just saying, let us pray for an increase of hunger for the things of God for these prodigals and a memory of what the Spirit of God did feel like. So Mitch Murphy is here with us. There's a reason that we're going here. He's been an incredible welcomed addition to this ministry, and this answer to prayer, even for us here, and seeing a prodigal come home, but even the activation of this young man, and we're going to get into that. About a year ago, though, so in all this, and you lost your license, and you had some tough times there in Alberta, but you actually ended up getting your Red Seal plumber's ticket.
Plumber gas fitter, yeah.
Plumber gas fitter, congratulations. That's awesome. All right. Something happened about a year ago, though. You're a prodigal. Something happened. COVID happened just over a year ago, but something else happened to you. You ended up calling out to God once again. Give us just a snapshot of that.
Yeah, so I'd hit rock bottom, and that didn't even lead me to God. I still wasn't willing to surrender. It was that I was just so unwilling to give up the things that I liked and what I thought was correct and my me. That's what all the sin always comes back to me and what I want. But kind of what happened was I got sober, so I sat in AA meetings for years, and I got sober, and I just started fixing my character defects, and in AA they say that you have to have a relationship with your higher power. And they say your higher power could be this coffee cup, and so that worked for me. I just said, okay, I had kind of a pantheistic worldview at that time, just figured, well, God is everywhere, and if that's what I have to believe to get sober, that's what I'll do. And so I fixed a lot of the really devastating parts of myself as far as just the drinking was the biggest one. It was alcohol, and I dabbled in other things but never had problems. It was alcohol gripped me my whole life ever since I tried it at 13 years old. It just had me. So I got sober and I was starting to fix myself, but I still had that God-sized hole, and that was when it became quite clear to me that God does not exist within psilocybin mushrooms, and God does not exist within you in the way that the pantheists would say. God does not exist in the coffee cup. God is can only exist as the creator, outside, as an objective reality outside of time and space, similar to how truth exists outside of our dimension. Truth exists outside of our dimension, whether we're there to observe it or not. Truth is truth, and God is the same thing. He's real, and so for me, I kind of figured I'm going to have to start to get to know him. And I, luckily, through my New Age stuff, I'd read the Quran, I'd gotten into these New Age things, and they all came up short. The God of the Muslims can't do what my God can do. And you can only believe that you are God for so long and watch yourself fail enough times until you cry out for the King of Kings, Jesus Christ.
Wow. And I just want to give a quick mention to our audience. The Canadian Firewall now has their own YouTube channel. And this video that you're watching here on the Firewall, if you've caught it, is viewable again on our Canadian Firewall YouTube channel. As well, we will be posting it on the Harvest Ministries International. If you want to share this with a prodigal, if you want to share this with a young person that you're praying for and saying, hey, look at what God is doing. Okay. Now, a year ago, you start to have an awakening. Can you say that you that you came back to the Lord?
Yeah, it was funny. I refused to get saved. I was starting to get to know the Creator, and I was starting to get to know God and get back into my Word, but I could not submit. I couldn't give myself up to Him as something that's above me, ironically as a higher power. I couldn't wrap my head around that, but I carried around so much pain and so much trauma, and that I remember I was on this trip, and my friend Jamaica brought me out to Rockridge, which is a Young Life property that they have out there. And I remember looking out of the mountains, and God revealed Himself to me, and I started weeping. And I remember I looked over at Jamaica, and I said, "Oh, can I swear? Is that?" said, "Holy SHIT, okay. He's real. He's real." And I just couldn't believe it. I was so mind blown because I could see Him. I could see Him blowing down the mountainside and hovering over the lake. He was there.
Wow.
And so that night I was looking over the same hillside, and I just said, "God, if you can take this from me, I'll submit to your authority, and I'll do this." Because I knew what it meant too.
Wow.
You know, I knew what it meant to fully submit, because I'd known true Christians as a child, and I knew the severity of what it meant to really become a bond slave to Christ, and I just said I'm willing, because I had this darkness, this tar in me that I was just carried around everywhere that I went, and he took it. I felt it get pulled out of me, and I just said, I'm yours. And
okay,
can't look back now.
About a year ago. Hard to say a timeline.
Yeah, a year and a half maybe. I don't even know.
Well, had you already, we're going to go into this, had you already been protesting by the time, you had this revelation? Was it around the same time, or just had you already been protesting?
Yeah, I would have been protesting. Like, I think the phase that I would have been at was we would have had 15 people maybe at our rallies. Because this was, right in the early days.
So middle of March, lockdowns happen. You started almost instantly joining with a group protesting.
Mm-hmm.
Protesting what?
Government overreach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a 24-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Don't mind me saying kid.
Right.
You're a 24-year-old kid, young man. You're supposed to be just out there partying and playing video games. And what are you doing? You're protesting. Okay. What was there to protest? Government lockdowns. Okay. What in your mind, how did you see that it actually was something that you actually needed to make a stand against and protest?
Well, so through those years where, I mentioned I was reading the Quran, and I was reading a lot of atheist literature, and I was getting involved in all these things, there was the spiritual side of my focus, but there was also the political and the cultural searching that I was doing. Because you got to understand, Art, I used to drink a lot. I spent a lot of time boozing and escaping. And so when that was gone, I had to do something, especially because I didn't know God. And so all my weekends and nights and evenings, they were all spent researching and reading and looking into these things. And I started noticing that every cause that the young people get behind has to do with splitting us up into groups. You know what I mean? It's like you either get behind Black Lives Matter, or you don't believe Black Lives Matter. But I went to the Black Lives Matter website, and they right on the front page it says defund the police, and I thought, well, I think Black Lives Matter, but I'm not behind this organization. Why is everybody calling me a racist? And so that was the first thing. And then, I believe that we're all equal under God, and that we should have equal rights. But then you get into what the rainbow flag means, and all of a sudden you realize none of these people believe in private property. And so, they say that the gay agenda is a fallacy, but listen to your local pride advocates. Listen to what they say. Go to their social media pages, and you'll notice they don't believe in private property. And and if it's a white person that speaks at one of these things, they'll give themselves 30 metaphorical lashings before they say anything. And I don't believe in that. I don't. And so, as I watched young people fall for these false narratives over and over and over again, I finally saw the light when they did this lockdown, because to me it was so clear that whether this was a dangerous virus or not, whether it was the big spooky so scary cooties 19 that they promised us or not, I knew this was the globalists mobilizing to gain more control over the people. Because that's, if you look back in the timeline, you'll notice it goes Cold War, radical Islamic terrorism, climate change, Corona. And what each one of these crises has in common is that they require a global effort. And it's like Ronald Reagan said. He said, if only we had an external threat, like an alien invasion, we would all unify and come together. And that seems to be the trend, is that they want, and I'm sorry for getting conspiratorial on your program, but it just seems like they want one unifying body. They want one consolidated center of control. And they want us all to think the same, look the same, act the same, dress the same, and wear the same thing. And I want to do something about it. And this was clearly a false narrative that we needed to fight back. Because I knew it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. I knew it wasn't going to be a month. And so I got involved. I found the nearest rally I could find, and I got involved.
So let me get this straight. You're not even really with the Lord yet at the time. You're fighting your own demons of alcoholism. But now you start searching, you start studying, and you start to find the divisive tactic of world order, and really the darkness behind it.
Yeah.
And so you start protesting. What did that look like?
At the beginning, it was me and, no offense, but probably 15 boomers. These people were all much older than me. They were probably in their 60s, and they're legends. I love these people.
God bless the boomers.
We love the boomers.
Yeah.
But I just remember looking around going, why is it them? Why isn't it my generation? All the people that I know that I grew up with, that went off to university and came back with the same opinion, they all have marched for climate change. They all have marched for Black Lives Matter and these things, but they won't come out and oppose pastors being put in jail. They won't come out and oppose our mobility rights that it clearly states on your passport that you can travel you can leave Canada, you can come back, and you can travel within Canada all you want. It says that right on your passport, and the young people aren't going to stand up to defend that. And then when the vitriol too, like young people just hated me when I went out to these things. They would spit out their car windows. I mean, Jordan remembers, for people who know Jordan from the church, like. Yeah. And people would spit at us and they'd yell. Like, we'd see soccer moms. They'd hang out their car window. They'd go, I hope you effing die of corona, like you piece of this. And it just awful. But it was very clear to me that it was darkness, and it's just our people are in a fallen state. And they just have a misguided sense of morality, I think.
Okay, so you start protesting. It's mainly older people.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Canadian Charter of Rights? Did that trigger anything for you? Like,
well, of course, because I'm politically I'm a libertarian. I believe that if there was no more law tomorrow, I believe that if the federal government dissolved, I wouldn't commit more crimes than I do now. I think that criminals are going to be criminals, and people left to their own devices just want to go to work and come back and raise a family. I don't think that we need all these things. But that's a bit of an extreme view, and so I'm comfortable compromising with the rest of the country, whether you're a liberal, a conservative, or whatever. I'm happy compromising on the charter, because that is something that we can all agree that you can gather and you can practice your religion and you can travel, you can just have these basic freedoms like freedom of expression, you can have these things. That's supposed to be like the bottom line, that's supposed to be the one thing we all agree on. But all of a sudden, we're the bad man because we are standing up for it, when supposedly the generation before, they sent their young men to die for that charter, for the defense of that charter. But now they're throwing a pastor in jail, and I'm the bad man because I'm not okay with it. to me, that was a clear sign of just a programmed population that needed to be shaken up a little bit and deserves to be offended.
Okay, all right. So let's go back to, you have an awakening. You're protesting, now you have an awakening. You meet with God. You've repented of your sins. You call upon God. All right. So did you start going to church?
No. I had no
Okay.
faith in church.
Oh,
I'd
okay.
seen enough of these limp-wristed pastors waving rainbow flags around, and every church was closed. Every church was closed. Not one of these churches was going to stand up. And because, let me tell you something, Art. When the first lockdown happened, I was having a bad time, and I thought after I'd gotten sober, what I'd always done when I was having a bad time was I would go to an AA meeting. I would find a meeting, and I would go sit with those alcoholics, and I would say, "Hi, I'm Mitch. I'm an alcoholic. This is what's going on," and we'd talk, and I would feel better because through these hard times, all I would want to do is just go to the liquor store and drink myself to death. And so when this lockdown happened, I had the option. It was a 5-minute walk turning right outside my house or a 5-minute walk turning left to my house. I could either go to the liquor store or to the church. But as far as I'm concerned, the church deserted me and every other addict and every other alcoholic that needed a meeting during that lockdown.
Wow.
And I stayed
Okay.
sober, but I don't know how many people relapsed. I don't know how many people overdosed. I don't know how many people drank themselves to death. I don't know how many people lost their kids because they went into an alcoholic stupor and did something bad. And we're all responsible for our own actions, but I got to point the finger at the church because I needed them and they weren't there for me.
So today, as we're discussing with Mitch Murphy on this prophetic perspective program, finding out the heart of a young man who was a prodigal, just come back to the Lord, and what he felt in the lockdown, what he felt as churches of Canada shut their doors. For us here in Kelowna, as some of you may know, we received 5 separate large tickets from the RCMP as we did not shut our doors. We're not liked in many places of Canada. We have been, let's just say, talked about by many other pastors here in this city, in the nation, for our stand, and also to let the Canadian intercessors know, we, and most of you will know, that our ministry here, when Bonnie Henry locked us down, we prayed, we said, God, what are we supposed to do? We knew that many people were quoting Hebrews 10, do not give up the act of meeting together or assembling of yourselves, as some are in the habit of doing. So that was one scripture verse that was really being, looked at, and we felt God on it. I went to prayer, and I said, Lord, you need to show me what we're supposed to do here in this ministry. This was at the end of November when we were shut down. I said, Lord, what are we supposed to do? It would be at the beginning of December that Bonnie Henry was supposed to open up the churches again in British Columbia. The bar next door was filled to 50% capacity. Nobody was masking. Everyone's having a great time, staying late, being loud, eating wings, drinking beer, so on and so forth. While us next door to them, we weren't allowed 6 people to have communion with masks on. Now, we know that sometimes in Christianity, walking with Jesus, sometimes you have to be willing to be, persecuted. You have to be willing to be treated wrong. And we also know, though, that at some point we have to stand for our family, stand for what's right, stand for the Word of God, and maybe even the Canadian Charter of Rights. And when I started praying, when Bonnie Henry said, no, we're not opening, we're going to stay shut for another month, I said, Lord, show us what to do. He gave me a dream. In my dream, it's very short, but I was standing on a podium that wasn't much bigger than this taller. And I looked out over the crowd of people, and I said, pastors of Canada, We must open up the churches, and we must be in unity together. So thus, we continue to stay open. Then, Bonnie Henry announced at the beginning of January that we would be locked down for another month. And I said, Lord, I need to know. I know I already asked, forgive me. I felt like Gideon, putting the fleece out. And though it's wet, he wants it dry. And though the ground's wet, he wants it dry. And I came back to the Lord again. Lord, I just want to see in your word, speak to me. I cracked it. Hebrews 10, do not give up the act of meeting together. So we did not shut. We came under much criticism in the nation of Canada and in the province. Well, at the beginning of January, someone invited you, Mitch, to come to this church. Now, so why would you come to church when you were, you felt that the churches were not there for you and couldn't go to AA and so on and so forth? Mm-hmm. So what led to you coming to here?
Well, shout out Kim, because Kim invited me.
Right on, Kim.
Kim from the rallies. And she was also one of the first guests on my podcast, too. So just shout out Kim anyway.
Wow.
But yes, so I just didn't really have any faith in church. I mean, I heard a phrase the other day that got me thinking is that a religious man goes to church and thinks about fishing, and a man who knows God goes fishing and thinks about religion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that was
right.
that was where I found myself, is I figured, well, the churches aren't going to do me any good, so I'll just get to know God and get my word and that stuff. But that only got me so far myself. I know some people that have given up on church that are saved, that are great, and they're, some of them know the word better than me, and there's no problem there. But yeah, I was at a point where I was willing to stand with anybody. I would have gone to an open mosque. I don't care. At that point, I felt called to bring everybody together. And I believed in Jesus, but I didn't have high expectations for what the harvest would be. It's not even that I had low expectations. I don't care if they're ravers that are throwing events in the woods that want to be free, or if they're Muslims or whoever. I was willing to stand with anybody that would stand for freedom. And so, yeah, Kim invited me here, and I was shocked by what I saw. It was like...
Okay.
Have you ever heard the phrase that the truth sounds different in court? Have you ever heard that?
No.
It's because people lie in court so much that if someone's being honest, it just sounds weird. It's just got a different ring to it.
Right.
And this world is so dishonest and so fake that the truth, the logos, sounds different. And not only could I hear it within Harvest, I could feel it in the air, man. I was like wafting it as soon as I walked in the door. It was like, something's going on here. And then when they would worship, I just couldn't believe it, because there's globalist news and RCMP outside trying to get in, but we just lock the door and stomp our feet and clap our hands, and God showed up. God would show up in that room. And I was watching people. I'd watch people come in broken, just completely broken, and they would leave better than they came in. And I remember one Saturday night I talked to a guy, and he goes, yeah, I died. He goes, I died on Friday. I go, oh yeah, like a spiritual death? What's going on, man? He goes, no, I snorted a bad line and I died, and they naloxoned me, and now I'm here.
So that's like that Narcan pen?
Yeah.
So he dies, he ODs.
Yeah.
And they had to bring him back to life.
Yeah. And he goes, my daughter's 18 years old, and now I get to watch her through the rest of her life. I get to grow old with her. And he said something along the lines of, I couldn't do it without the harvest. Because he goes, I'm here to stay. I think he'd been there a time or two before that. And yeah, just hearing testimonies like that and just feeling so at home with these people that just want to be free. And they, like, because when all your freedom's taken away, you're faced with the question of what is freedom to you? What is freedom to you? Is freedom to you... snorting Drano in the bathroom of a strip club? Or is freedom to you being able to gather with other believers and to praise your Creator? Is freedom to you being able to go camping? Or what is freedom to you? That's the real question that is raised when the government takes it away. And to me, it became very clear that I wanted the freedom through Christ. I wanted not only freedom from government overreach, but I wanted freedom from my addictions. I wanted freedom from things that kept me in the world at a lower vibration. I wanted liberation from the things of this world. And through corporate worship, you can break the chains, Art.
Corporate worship.
Yeah.
So you came in, you experienced corporate worship. Had you ever been in worship like that before?
Not like that.
Not like that.
Not like that.
So, dude buddy who dies, by the way, he is baptized. He's been,
Wow.
he's still coming. He's like, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about, but of course I'm not going to say who, you know. I'm going to just say he died 4 times, though. Yeah, they had a Narcan him 4 times that night.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really bad, but, you know, praise God, he's still here with us. Him, other addicts. You've seen different ones come in, different one broken.
Yeah.
Broken people. That's, you know, overall your experience at the Harvest. And how did we meet? But yeah, tell us just a little bit about you. So we stayed open. We're taking fines. Cops are out the door. Global news. Everyone's outside. But, you know, something was happening inside.
Yeah.
Because we stayed open. Or what?
Well, and I think part of the image that, like, because I've talked to some of my some churchian people that don't support church as an essential service, that support, you know, the church closing down because of a bad flu season. Sorry, I've thrown some shade, but I've talked to some people that they get a picture of like a bunch of homeless people coming through and just like a certain type of person with what we're talking about. But what people don't understand about addiction and about the side of our society that we're describing is it's all kinds. It's all kinds of people. Like some of the people that we're talking about push a shopping cart on Leon Avenue, but some of them are lawyers. Some of these people are highly successful business people. Some of these people that have these problems at this level have families, and they need help and they need salvation. Like it's the addiction in our nation goes a lot deeper than I think a lot of people realize or understand. But sorry, I'm off track though. What was your question?
That's fine. No, just about what did you experience? You saw people getting set free. You experienced worship. We met. I remember the day that you came. I remember the day. Yeah, I met you outside after, and you were outside here. You were smoking a cigarette. And you said, "What did you ask me?"
Yes, I asked if you'd baptize me. I remember I go, I've always wanted to get baptized by John the Baptist.
Okay,
it's crazy.
That was January. This January. So we're in July right now. So. You've not stopped coming.
Correct.
And the protests were still going all winter. And then the fines kept coming here, though, for us. Mm-hmm. And then we did something. As a church, we actually went outside and we started protesting. What did you feel about that?
Oh yeah, that's when I knew Kelowna was gonna make it on the map. Is when when you guys started coming out, because it was a whole nother thing. Because the body that is the Harvest carries the spirit with it everywhere it goes. And so these secular rallies were a beautiful thing, and I loved them, and I love the people there, and I've got nothing bad to say about it. But when the Harvest teamed up with it, and man, it just became so anointed. It became such a powerful thing. Like I remember at our Chris Sky rally, there were these 2 young girls that came up, and they were, I believe, sent by the enemy to try to stir something up. And the reason I say that is because they came in with masks on, and one side of the girls' sign said, chances of me getting the vaccine, 666%. And then the other side said something derogative about anyway, I'll leave that out. But it was just clearly, to me, sent by the enemy, and they were, whether it was their intention or not, what they were doing was stirring up the crowd and getting the crowd in this headspace that was looking at them as the enemy. And it was just, the vibe was starting to get bad, and it wasn't looking good.
That wasn't our event.
No.
That was a different one uptown.
No. Right. But one of the Harvest members was there.
Right.
And I remember looking around and looking up too and wondering what do I do now? And one of the Harvest members goes, "Mitch, give me the mic," and just spoke the word of God at the crowd, and they all calmed down. Shout out Tyler as well.
Yeah, Tyler, I was there.
And
remember that?
And just the Spirit of God just blew over the crowd. Everybody relaxed, and then I just did my song with those girls up there.
Yeah.
And it was all love because they've got their opinion, we've got ours. It's okay.
Yeah.
It was a really incredible thing to witness, and without God, it'll fail.
So there were protests, secular protests, but then we started going out because more and more we were getting dogged here, being in the cave, not me. So we started protesting. They're taking church buildings away in Alberta. They're locking pastors up, and we felt that we were supposed to stand in solidarity with Pastor James Coates, Grace Life. Pastor James Coates not only did 35 days in maximum security prison, where he was only allowed out of his jail cell for 1 hour a day, his crime for pastoring and having church services. But Grace Life Church was taken, they took their whole building, and they had 0 cases of COVID. We stayed open all year. We were 2 to 3 times a week, packed in a little room, no social distancing, no masking. I know we're bad people. Singing, expecting a flu to come along at some point, like, whoop, go home, get better, people, stay away for 2 weeks. It never came for us personally. I do want to say, I believe the prayers of the Canadian Firewall and our worship, which God came in, really pushed back, any flu that might have, any bug, any COVID that might have hit us. But now we were outside. We were protesting, and we did a trip actually when we went to Alberta.
Right.
We were bad again. We were bad people. And we crossed the border with a whole convoy and a bus and a whole worship band. And we went to the Edmonton legislature, and we worshiped with about 500 people in the rain that first night. And we did something bad there as well, worse, and we brought Maxime Bernier to the mic and stuff, and you joined us there. What do you got to say to the church or to millennials for what we did and what you saw, and even where this might be going?
Well, first of all, not sorry. I'm not sorry. And you shouldn't be sorry either. 'Cause weren't Christians fed to lions? You know what I mean? What would the church of the time back then have said? Would they have said, oh, just renounce your faith? You don't have to get fed to the lions. But these Christians used to get fed to lions, and now they're threatened with a little fine that probably won't even hold up in court, and they say, oh, thank you, government, for keeping me safe. These people are insane. When addiction is at an all-time high, overdoses are at an all-time high, depression's at an all-time high, the people need to be saved. And so you either believe in this stuff, you either believe that Jesus can save them, and you open up, or I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you think's going to happen, to where the prodigal's going to go if they start to wake up and they start to get called by God. Are they just going to stay home? Are they going to go to Zoom church? Are you these people are just, I don't know what they think is going to happen. If there's a young man with fire for God that believes that if he can lead someone to Jesus Christ, that he's leading them to eternal salvation, is that person going to start a Zoom chat? Is he going to start going on Zoom and trying to save these people? Because these high amplitude people, especially young men and young prodigals like myself, they need reality. They need something real, because the world is fake. The world is virtual, and they're trying to push us into this virtual thing where they just want the young man drinking soy lattes and taking girls out on Zoom dates that they met on the internet and not even meeting them in person. It's insane, Art.
Wow. So, all right. Speaking about insane, your shirt says, children cannot consent to puberty blockers. You made that shirt. Mitch Murphy, redpillnation.ca.
Yes.
You were recently downtown with Billboard Chris and Jordan. You guys went and seen pictures. Chris Elston, if you remember him, he was on the program a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to touch base just a couple minutes. I want you to see, Canada, some of the results of your prayers. We have a young man, a Gen Zer, Zoomer, millennial, whatever, not in the basement, just on Zoom, not hiding away, hiding behind a mask, playing video games, but he's actually out. What does that mean, children cannot consent to puberty blockers?
Well, it comes from a UK court ruling, actually,
Okay.
which is that children cannot give consent to puberty blockers. What a lot of people aren't aware of is that under the guise of inclusivity and under the guise of the virtuous rainbow flag, and it's all this fake virtue, but they're being taught in schools that your biological sex is one thing and that gender is in your mind and it's a social construct. And they're being taught that gender is entirely based on stereotypes. So if a young girl likes to play with trucks and likes to play in the mud, she's not a tomboy, she's a boy. She's a boy. And to tell her that she's a girl is considered abuse. And if you do that, CPS can take her away from you. Because what is happening is that not every teacher teaches the SOGI, S-O-G-I. That's what every parent should have a very deep understanding of what it is SOGI, S-O-G-I.
Sexual orientation and gender identity.
Exactly, yeah. What they're being taught is this false ideology, which is that gender is a social construct, and that if you are a child born in the wrong body, that you should go see a counselor and a psychiatrist. And if you go to the BC Children's Hospital, it'll take you about 15 minutes of just a little meeting for one of these doctors to put you on a drug called Lupron, or one of these puberty blockers, which stops puberty. And another one of the lies that they're being taught is that it's entirely reversible. They say, oh, you can just get off the puberty blockers later if you change your mind. But what happens when you go on puberty? I mean, people can listen to Billboard Chris on your show if they want all the details. But
there's
these things that happen on puberty that you can't just get. There's no time machine. You can't get back. And so what's happening is these kids are getting sterilized, they're getting mutilated, and they're getting led down this wrong path. And it's another one of these things where it's just one small piece of this, what I would classify as the New World Order agenda, is they're just trying to demoralize the entire population. Because if you don't have God, and you don't have any morals, then the state can do the most immoral things to you and you have no reason to object. If you have no basis for what is moral and what is good, what basis do you have to object when the state puts your pastor in jail?
Wow.
So
You're 25 years old, just come back to the Lord, and now you're blowing the trumpet on the SOGI indoctrination of our kids. We're proud of you, Mitch. We're proud of you.
Thanks, Art.
And in Canada, I don't want to say, we need more voices. We need more truth tellers to come forward here in the nation. So Mitch, you were out there recently and had the billboards, and you had a lot of flack, negative, of course, but you're making a stand. You're making a stand. So, just a snapshot. What do you think God is saying to you about your life right now? What might God be saying to you as far as, what's important and what we should be doing?
God's telling me that it's time to shake him up. It's time to shake him up a bit, because what a lot of people aren't even aware of is that this, and you can classify it as however you want. Some people will call it leftism, some people will call it liberalism, some people will call it the New World Order agenda, some people will call it global homo. Whatever you want to call it, there's boots on the ground activism that is well funded. It's well funded and it's highly organized, and they have office space and they have tons of money coming in, and I can't stress this enough, is that these organizations, these movements are well funded and well organized, and they're putting in work to make sure that things like Bill C-6 get put into law. And they're working hard for these censorship bills and these UNDRIP and all these things that are coming down the pipe that all lead back to communism. They all lead back to this degenerate communist state. And so, because they're so organized, because they're so effective at what they're doing and propagandizing the young people, it's time for there to be some opposition, because everybody's too scared. But the only way that we can do it is if we have the power of Christ with us, with our movement, because we're truly going up against the beast, which you'll figure out really quick if you poke your nose into some of these areas. You're going up against the beast, and so if you believe that you're God, that's great. if you believe that your God is in your coffee cup and in this table and in all these things or whatever, that's great, and you do whatever you want to do. But you're not going to take down this agenda. You're not going to take down this opposition without God, because it is good versus evil. It is.
Wow.
As you dig into it, that becomes very clear, and so you need Christ with you.
We need Christ. We need to make a stand. What would you say to the pastors? You know, you've just come back to the Lord. All the churches were shut down, but just, today, now BC's open. We've gone back into the cave. July 1st, all restrictions were removed from having church. Do you have anything to say to the pastors, church leaders? Not just anything to say? Anything nice?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say, who do you work for? Who do you work for? Who tells you when to close your doors? Who tells you how many people can come through your doors? Who tells you how many people you can save? Who tells you how you worship, what you worship? Who do you work for? What do you have faith in? Do you have faith in an experimental jab? Or do you have faith in Jesus Christ, the King of Kings? What? Because you got to understand that your actions speak much louder than your words. So who do you let through your doors? Do you let the worshipers through?
Wow.
That's what I would say.
All right. So what do you think the church should be doing?
Outreach and opposition is what I would say. I would say do outreach to people that get it, that need fortification, that need sanctification. Because that's where I was at when I walked through these doors. Is I was saved but not sanctified, not even close. And I think there's a lot of young people that are in that position, that are saved but not sanctified, and they need a bit of guidance to be shown the way. And so build the body, make it as strong as possible, and make it very clear what you believe and what you don't. And then be an opposition. Be an opposition to these things that are wrong. Be an opposition.
So make a stand?
Yeah, make a stand against the state sterilizing children. For starters, there's lots of things, but I don't need every pastor to be telling you who to vote for or anything like that. But what we should have is some opposition, because that's supposed to be how democracy works. But right now, everybody's on this sinking ship, and I don't like the direction we're headed. And most of these people, if you talk to them behind closed doors, they get it. They understand what I'm saying. They know that masks don't work. They know that it's wrong for the state to throw your pastor in jail, but they're too scared to do anything about it. So buck up a little bit and be brave. Live free.
This has been amazing. Yet another amazing program with a youngster. You made a comment I heard the other day, because it's dark out there. And they are sterilizing our kids. And there is truly a UN globalist agenda. And I don't want to even go into and just spread fear, but there's a lot of despair. But you said something else. Instead of despair,
prepare.
All right.
Prepare over despair. That's it. Yeah, just grow your food. If you don't want to wear a mask to go to the grocery store, grow it. Kill it. Get a hunting license. Kill your food. Grow your food. It's all about prepare, because it's pretty much all an offer. You know what I mean? Like if they like with this vaccine, it's like they're offering you like lollipops and donuts for this thing, but just say no. Just don't take the offer and you'll be all right. Just build community, bloom where you're planted, prepare over despair. That's what I say.
Prepare over despair. One last message I want to hear from you. To other millennials or Gen Zers, come on. What do you have to say to them? And how should people pray? I guess two things. What do you have to say to the millennials, and how should we pray?
I would say that you are so much more than worthless pond scum. I would say you are so much more than matter in motion blowing through a meaningless void. You are built in the image of God, and you know it. You know that this is special. You know you're not an animal. You know that. And so but the tricky thing is that the more you act like an animal, the more you become one. And so become a based and red-pilled man of God. That's what I'd say, is just like wake up and start looking into things. Stop numbing yourself with these substances and with the video games and with the movies and stuff. Stop falling asleep to Netflix. Stop eating Doritos every day. Just wake up, find the Logos, find the truth, and you'll come to realize that there's so much more to this life. And it's because it's God's plan. It's God has a path for you that is not just better in the afterlife, but it's so much better in this life, is what I'd say.
That's good. Well, thank you, intercessors. Here's some of the fruit of your labors, some of the prayers. Let's pray for these truth tellers. Let's pray for these millennials, Gen Zs, to find their voice, to stand up. Let's pray for the churches to open up fully, to make a stand, to make room for them, to disciple them, to release them, that they would find their voice. So, well, this is Mitch Murphy here, has joined us today with Art Lucier for Eagle Eye Prophetic Perspectives. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.